Right?
All right, you ready? All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the November 9th monthly school board meeting of the Metropolitan School District of North Posey. We'll open the meeting by joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up, I'd like to congratulate our current board members on their recent re-election. So congratulations, Vince and Amy. And I noticed we have a guest in the crowd, our big crowd we have tonight. Our soon-to-be new board member, Mr. Larry Colley. Congratulations on your election as well. Look forward to working with you. First official item on the agenda is patrons' concern. We will mark that as none received. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, claim docket, consent items. Have gone out to everybody previously. We'll entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
Second?
I'll second that.
So motion by Mrs. Will and seconded by Mr. Stock to approve the claim docket, consent items, and meetings minutes as presented. Any comments or questions?
For clarification, Albert Spencer, that's Albert Spencer Jr. from North Elementary Wrestling, I believe.
Oh.
Not Albert Spencer.
Not the dad?
Not the dad, it's his son.
The son.
Okay, Junior?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a question on the technology items and surplus, are those just disposed of? Or
There is a place in Evansville that comes and picks them up free, and then they take them and they resell them to charities, whatever, and scrap. Any monitors they scrap because of the, you can't just put those in a dumpster, so.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. New business, Mr. Gowan.
Well, good evening, everyone. So this evening you have in your packet, and Amy, I think, is going to be hooking up with Dr. Brad Balch from the Indiana State University. And Brad and I have worked together previously. He does a lot with the Indiana School Board Association, and Dr. Michael Adamson, who I'm sure you guys have recognized from attending some of those school board sessions and things. Dr. Balch has done strategic planning with probably anywhere from about 30 to 50 corporations across the state of Indiana. And so he does a lot of these kinds of things with corporations and with school boards. This is, you have the proposal in there, and Brad's going to be joining us and kind of going through the proposal, and we're getting the technology to work for us here.
I don't.
But to kind of go through the proposal a little bit, it's kind of an a la carte situation. So in other words, you're not paying for everything in one fell swoop. You're paying for stuff as needed, and we may not need all the stuff. And so it's just kind of a process that we're going to go through. We want it to be transparent. One of the things that I've shared with you is we're going to be doing a lot of listening tours to get input from the community and from the different stakeholders to kind of bring back to the strategic planning process. And the other thing too that we wanted to stress is that we want this to be very transparent. And so where this was kind of connected to was going back to that original superintendent survey that you did prior to your search. And one of the things that came out in that survey was the community and the people who responded to that really wanted to know what was the direction, what was the vision, what were the goals of the district, and really understanding where the district is headed. And so that strategic plan is going to really help us to kind of organize all of our resources, give us a clear vision, give us a clear direction, give us some goals. And then underneath that, we'll do a facilities audit to kind of look at our facilities and say, do our facilities support us moving forward? We'll look at our financial resources to kind of say, is financially, we can align towards those kinds of things. And then finally, what we'll do is we'll look at the instruction as far as our human resources side of it, and making sure that those are aligned and directing us towards that vision and things. And so this is a process that we'll go through, because as I've worked with boards previously, all of you have different priorities. And sometimes it's, we meet once a month, and sometimes it's difficult to understand and to share everything we want to have done in the district during that once a month meeting. And so what this will give us is some opportunities to really talk about what are our priorities, and to come together to where we have a clear and precise, this is our direction. These are our priorities that we want as a board and stuff. And Jeff and I talked, and because of the virtual ISBA conference this past year, we thought that it would be better to use that money that we normally use for your training purposes to do the strategic planning process. And so we'll actually start in January. When Mr. Colley joins us, we'll start in January. In that first round, we'll just kind of be that board retreat and talking about the roles, talking about the responsibilities of board members, talking about the communication between us. We'll be looking at that Strengths Finder assessment that you guys will do, and then we'll go into February where we'll start that strategic planning process. And what you guys will mainly do is look at that process and approve that process. We'll look at the vision, we'll look at the mission, we'll look at core beliefs, and those core beliefs are important because that's how we actually will behave in the district, more or less. This is what we believe in, this is how we will behave, and our expectations from our staff and stuff. And then what will happen is the administrative council or the principals will join in from that point forward. I'm gonna check my phone here and see if Dr. Balch is coming that way. And then at that point in time, when they join it, when the principals join us, they'll be taking what you're kind of laying out as those priorities and those goals, and they'll begin fleshing it out of what does it look like on a day in, day out basis in our schools. And that's kind of how we'll work together to kind of get that process going. So let me check and see if I can get a hold of him real quick.
There is a little square up there.
Us.
And when we talk, is that?
I think that's just showing us.
Okay. I thought that might be him.
When all else fails, you just put on speakerphone.
What time did you tell him?
6:45.
It's not 6:45. We could move on and come
Yeah.
back to
Yeah, you want to do
that.
that? Move on.
We'll table that for the
Yeah.
time being until we get more closer to when he calls back in, and then we'll re-engage it. All right, school board attorney.
So, as we've shared before, Mr. Bender is going to be stepping down from the position in January of 2021. And so we've kind of laid out the school board replacement timeline and information. And we wanted to kind of make that public so we can get that word out there. And so this has, the posting has gone out through social media as well as the website. And we've also sent it to the Poseyville newspaper. And so we kind of want to go through that. The school board attorney is an appointed position. It's not an elected position. And so therefore, you guys kind of choose that individual as a board of who you're going to have as your school board attorney. We've said that it's a preferred that interested candidates reside within the North Posey School District. However, the school board may select someone outside the district to ensure a candidate is chosen to represent the interests of the district. And then we'll go through the interview process at our next meeting in December. We'll have an executive session and we'll interview those candidates at that point in time. I think the big thing is as we kind of feel like, I think all of us do, is we want someone who's connected to the community, who has a love and compassion for North Posey and trying to help as we move forward and stuff. They serve a 1-year term, and the board reappoints that person every year in January at the regular school board meeting when you have your reorganization. And so it's not I know Bill's been with us for a very, very long time, but it's not like kind of like the Supreme Court justice of where you serve for the rest of your life kind of thing. So it's appointed on an annual basis. The attorney does not necessarily need to have school experience. The Indiana School Board Association does provide training on an annual basis that helps them to get that certification, and those trainings will be coming up. I'm sure this year they'll be virtual, but they can do that. And then as well, we talked about that the board will negotiate with that individual that we select for compensation for them helping and serving in that capacity. The timeline, of course, we've already started the advertisement period, and that's going to run through Friday, November 20th. We'll collect letters of interest, and those have already been posted out there for the school board to begin looking at those and considering those applicants. As we stated, we'll have interviews through the December school board executive session, and then that appointment of that new board attorney hopefully will come in January of 2021. So, any questions on that or comments? I didn't want to read that, but I wanted to publicly get that out there so that everyone knows that we're definitely looking.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that it gets out there. We want to, I think it's appropriate that if we know somebody that's interested or that we want to ask to gauge their interest, to go ahead and reach out. Anybody has the full opportunity to do that. We're not just, working through Mike at this point in time, because we're just getting information back in. So I think our preference was to have somebody within the district, but we didn't want to be locked into that just in case of having a better pool of candidates to be able to choose from.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, like Jeff and I have talked, that person may not necessarily have to be at every single school board meeting. So if they have a family or something like that, they can provide us with those services and stuff and not have to maybe be here every single month or once a month. So
I mean, Bill's done all the hard work, right?
Here you go.
It says he's allowed to join when we allow him, so I don't know if that needs to be off of your computer.
Probably does. So, there's a reason why I brought my computer. You want to go on to the next thing, Jeff?
Sure.
It's you.
That's
I
you.
can multitask, so.
So there's no action needed on the school board attorney. As you stated, we'll move that forward with the timeline as he put out. Next item up was the reviewing of the proposed calendar options for 21, 22, 22, 23.
There's been, Mr. Gowan was gonna do this, but there's been 2 calendars, for 2 years. 22, and 23.
All right, now you're good.
Okay, I think
And-
you're in now. Does it look like you're coming in?
Yeah.
Yep, no, you're speaking now. Okay, well, hang up.
We can go back to that.
Okay.
Just go to this.
Dr. Balls, can you hear me? Okay, I don't think you have your audio on, sir.
I'm barely hurting.
Am I speaking right there?
You can turn ours up.
Try again.
How about now?
Yes.
There we go.
Well, Dr. Balch, I've already kind of introduced you and kind of shared a little bit of your background as far as what your experience has been in doing cultural audit, or excuse me, doing strategic planning around the state and stuff. So whatever you would like to show or share, but mainly I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Well, very good. It's a privilege to join you this evening, and thanks for the service you provide our Hoosier students. I've known Michael for some time, and I was just so very pleased that things worked out for him to serve as your new superintendent. So, Michael, once again, a very public congratulations to you. I'll just make some introductory comments, and I know you've seen a prospectus, and then I just be pleased to talk with you or answer any questions you might have. And typically, in the current times that we're living in, when I started strategic planning 20 some years ago, we often looked at 7 to 10 year plans, but there's simply been so many forces bearing down on our Indiana public schools that trying to predict where we might be 6, 8, even 10 years from now could be a difficult thing. And we know that in 2025, statewide, we're going to graduate the smallest K-12 senior class that we've seen in decades. So, given all those kinds of impacts and forces, we're seeing 3 to 5 year strategic plans right now, with the most common being around 4. I would say to you that you no doubt are feeling pulled in many ways, just given the day-to-day needs of a complex school organization. And the importance of a strategic plan is there's this old adage that says if everything's a priority, you have no priorities at all. And the strategic plan really helps that school board superintendent team set the tone that at the end of the day, here is what's most important. And doesn't mean other things won't be dealt with or addressed, but at the end of the day, as a governing body, you have helped communicate what those strategic priorities are to your superintendent so that he or she then can spend time deciding how we will address those important priorities. Strategic planning through a textbook lens would suggest that as a board, you have 3 primary strategic planning responsibilities. The first is that you would approve a process and an overall timeline. And that kind of sets the tone for the ensuing months. The second piece is that you would have large ownership in the foundational statements, the vision, mission, and the values. And in the simplest of terms, the vision is your dream. The mission is how you'll arrive at your dream. And then the core values are a bit unique because those are the things that you hold yourselves accountable to. They're the things that you would expect your faculty, your staff, even your students to hold themselves accountable to those statements. Value statements often are similar to a moral compass, and typically there's 5 to 7. We package those with the vision and mission, and we'll share them with the community so stakeholders external to your corporation know what those important values that you've settled on are, but they really are only for us. Those of us within the corporation, you wouldn't expect, for example, a community member to hold themselves accountable to your values. So they differ just slightly. But once you pull together your vision, mission, and values, which is the second main tenet of a school board's charge, the third piece is to develop a brief process that develops your priorities. And we typically settle on 3 to 5 priorities. And at that point, then, this board has provided the leadership on the what. You have set the tone for strategic planning, you've decided on your foundational statements, and you've decided what those core priorities are. Oftentimes, then, the superintendent and his or her leadership team then step in and take a more lead role in determining how those priorities will be addressed. And so we undergo a process in which we do that. In the many years that I've been doing this, I never presume to roll into town and try to hand you a one-size-fits-all template because it doesn't work that way, at least in my mind. I mean, some districts already have a mission statement that they'd like to hold on to because much work and pride went into it. Others have vision, mission, and values all together and simply want to affirm those. Some districts have nothing at all. We start from scratch. The goal setting process is equally unique, and that would be something that I'd want to flesh out with all of you. Sometimes we move from the priorities straight into SMART goals, and those are a lengthy goal that says who's responsible, what we're trying to attain, what's the measurable indicators so we know if we're successful or not. And we can have SMART goals. Other organizations like to start with broader goal statements. They're more like complete thoughts or phrases. And then everyone can find their place in the goal statement. What's this look like at the district level? What's this look like at the building level? And in some cases, you can ask, what might this look like at the classroom level? So there are simply many different ways that you could go with your strategic planning once we get into the goal setting phase. And it'd be my privilege to help support whatever you think best fits the needs of your district. Anywhere between 6 months to 12 months is a very doable timeline. If I could advise you, sometimes anything less than that, it doesn't necessarily feel hustled, but you don't have the stakeholder buy-in. The quicker we go, the fewer the people that clearly or believe they have a stake in the success of that next strategic plan. But finding somewhere in between 6 and 12 months, everyone can find a fit in a good strategic plan. I did offer in that prospectus, I'm getting used to distance venues. I will say to you that there's probably it's a difficult substitute for face-to-face, because in strategic plans, we build meaning together. And so I always greatly appreciate being able to be directly with stakeholders in strategitic planning. But if it would become necessary, or if it's your desire to do this via distance, I've been with them. I'm taking Indiana State University through a 2-year process currently, and we're using a heavy emphasis on all technology and Zoom meetings and Qualtrics surveying over online. South Bend Schools right now has had an escalation in their COVID numbers, and so they've chosen to do a lot of their work online. I do. In fact, right now we're even solely Zooming with the board administrative team. But everyone's different across the state, and again, I would be pleased to support however you would like to approach this. So with that generally being said, are there any questions that I could answer for you?
I don't think we have anything, Dr. Balch.
All right. If you should decide that you'd like me to support your strategic planning, I mentioned to Michael I still have a teaching load and those sorts of things, and so the earlier that I could get commitments on the calendar, I will always be faithful to those. I just like to plan ahead, so we can do that. And in there, you saw a general planning meeting. That may or may not be necessary, but if you'd like to just think through from beginning to end what this is going to look like over the next 6 months, or if you'd like to charge your superintendent with that conversation, I'd be pleased to really nail this down. I think what you're looking at has lots of options and casts a fairly wide net, understanding that your needs are going to be different than other public school districts.
Just a lot of head shaking.
Yeah, it's something that we haven't done as a district.
As far as I know, never.
So, it's a process that I think is worth us exploring and partaking in. I like the prospectus and the fact that it was a la carte and not just a one-size-fits-all price, that you're going to pay for this whether you use it or not type of deal.
Yes.
And I think there's going to be a learning curve as we get into this on how to go through it. Probably we've all been through some sort of strategic planning of some sort of form or fashion, but no, I look forward to it. I think it's going to be good to involve the community and get this rolled out and our ship pointed in the right direction.
I'm highly respectful of the fact that tax dollars are what we have at stake here. And, a good example is when we start developing the goal statements, I've worked with districts where individuals such as yourself have been through this process. And so I need not be so closely connected. And then I've worked with districts where they've said, will you just come in and spend a few hours and jumpstart principals on a SMART goal process, and we'll take it from here. Whatever level I can support you to keep this as efficient as possible would always be my goal. If you look more broadly nationwide, in communities, one of the greatest criticisms when they talk about board superintendent teams is a lack of transparency. And what's interesting is we've actually got research that dates all the way back to the 50s in Sputnik that can explain this perception of a lack of transparency. One of the things that we know, though, through the National School Boards Association is that perceptions of board superintendent teams being more transparent and open with their communities grows greatly from going through a strategic planning process, because it just really forces the conversation about what means most to this team that I'm with tonight. And it's a very healthy way to get those sort of cornerstones or pillars of importance on paper. And then there's the opportunity to vet those things with groups in your community, teachers, staff, even students. I mean, you have a host of opportunities to get create feedback loops, so that by the time anything's ever approved and codified, you know that it also carries the weight of your community's voice and those many stakeholder groups.
We talked, Dr. Balch and I talked a little bit about the survey that you guys had done prior to the superintendent search. And so that first item there, talking a little bit about let's see here. What it is. The survey, the Qualtrics survey that he was talking about. Dr. Balch and I talked briefly about maybe holding off on that since we have that information and moving forward with kind of the strategic planning process, but then circling back around about a year or so after the strategic plan to come back and kind of do a survey with our community to say, how are things going? You know what I'm saying? To kind of have that measurement and stuff there with that. So that survey is very, very thorough. Dr. Balch has. He has a bank of questions that asked on several different levels, with district level leadership, building level leadership, teachers, classrooms, all those different levels. And you kind of select what you want that survey to look like. And then that then kind of becomes our questions that we then can use as we go forward in measuring how the impact of the strategic plan is rolling out.
Yes, Michael, and thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that I appreciate you raising the notion of the survey, because along the way, any step of the way, the COVID has sort of forced me to build a technological venue for feedback. So, for example, if the board and superintendent team agrees on a set of priorities, I can create an electronic survey where if you would want to, we can ask your stakeholders, do you think this represents the clear priorities of the district? Are there any priorities that not listed that should be considered? Do the listed priorities seem doable within the strategic planning period? Is it an actual doable, worthy, and important priority? And so the survey analysis can also, rather than one large survey, we can use it in small incremental ways along your 6-month journey. If you should ever want feedback, when I use a survey such as that, the reason I use a Qualtrics platform is I'm the only person that ever sees identifiable information, which is the computer's IP address. And so that way, when respondents send their information, they know that nothing identifiable will ever make its way back to an executive summary. I just aggregate the results, and when my work with you is complete, I destroy that record. The other thing that I do is I have a qualitative software that takes their written words and it helps me develop themes, and so I can show you frequency words and things of that nature. So that if we had some open-ended questions, like I just mentioned as an example, we can draw out the general themes that come from your community or whatever stakeholder group we're soliciting feedback from. And it just makes it a doable task rather than starting with dozens of pages of open-ended content. I'll distill that into a few themes for you to consider as you take your next steps.
Any other questions for Dr. Balch? Or Dr. Balch, do you have anything else?
Not at this time. I just appreciate you considering me to help set the tone for your next steps. And if you're interested, I will very much look forward to hearing from you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Bob.
nice
Appreciate
evening,
it.
everyone. Good night.
So we need to entertain a motion to accept the proposal to move forward on the strategic plan process as presented.
So by making the motion, we would be approving the first part of the process. And then at a later time, we would decide whether or not we want to do the other.
But you're also choosing to go with Dr. Balch.
Correct.
You're choosing him as a leader.
Okay.
And then usually what happens is at each of those meetings, he'll say, what's the next step that you would like to take?
Mhm.
And then that's kind of when we make that decision, okay, we're ready to move here, or we're ready to go there. So,
Yeah. So we're entertaining a motion on the Dr. Balch proposal strategic planning process.
So I'll make a motion that we move forward with Dr. Balch's services for the strategic planning process.
Second,
I'll second.
so a motion by Mr. Schmidt and seconded by Mr. Oakley. Any comments or questions?
No, I do like the idea of moving the survey back since we just did
I
the
agree.
one for the superintendent search. I think it'd be a great idea.
Yeah, and I would like to see us come up with some sort of maybe a general budget to do it. I know it's all the card. I'd kind of like for us to be comfortable to a certain dollar amount, and then if it starts looking like it's gonna go above that,
Come back.
kind of revisit that before we continue moving forward.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So let's jump back to the calendar options. So we have the following 2 years, or upcoming 2 years calendars to consider for review.
So one thing that we did is just mainly looked at corresponding dates of where we stand out this year for the next 2 years. We did keep in the week-long fall break, which was very well received. My recommendation, of course, always is, it seems like that start date is always seeming to go further and further back into August, is to try to go with the calendar that has a later start date. So that's kind of what my recommendation would be on both those calendars. Looking at it, I think, if I remember correctly, both of them do finish before the Memorial Day holiday. The other thing we've talked a little bit about is currently we have those potential makeup e-learning days. And of course, that was before COVID happened. And now we have gone into the phase of where virtual learning is really a strong tool that we have now. And so that's another question, is do we leave those potential snow makeup days in there, or do we remove those and just, any snow days we have, we'll go to e-learn. So that could be a possibility.
So instead of snow days too, is there potential to have those as professional days and still have the kids out, or does that still not
You
accomplish?
can't do that without adding days to the teacher's contract, because then they'd be teaching e-learning, and then they would be doing those days as well. If you didn't have snow days, those would just be days off. If you have snow days and you have multiple in a row, and you don't want to have multiple e-learning days in a row, then you could say, well, the day's gonna be e-learning and the next day will be, made up on one of the snow makeup days.
Yeah.
But like Michael just said, that, we're doing that all the time now, so I don't think it's gonna be an issue with people doing work and submitting it. In the old method, they had 5 days to get it in. Now they're getting it in real time, so.
It just seems to me, and I know we gotta balance the calendar because of the first term, second term.
And you gotta try to stay with EVSC on your long breaks, because then students, they go to this school for a half day and they never really get a break.
Because we're sharing them with the technical center.
Yes.
Yeah, it just seems, to be off that early before Memorial Day does appear to be kind of harsh, but, because I think that one shows us getting off like on the Tuesday or something versus the Thursday before.
And the other thing too is that sometimes you balance, your second semester has more days in it than your first semester because of the amount of testing that we do in second semester. So that's sometimes the reason why there's a little bit of a difference there between the two semesters, just because of you've got about a week-long testing that's taking out instruction time.
Okay.
So these will go to Teacher Association for discussion. We've already sent them out to Mr. Wallace and stuff, and then we'll get feedback from them, and then we'll bring that to the board.
Get feedback from the principals tomorrow at the administrative meeting, and then Mr. Godwin will be bringing things to you, to the board.
Okay.
I definitely agree on the later we start, the better.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's too early already.
We went ahead and did the 2 years because a lot of times people just, in the business world, vacations sometimes are planned out an entire year in advance. And I know Dr. Camp said that they had kind of changed that because of just the professional development. We didn't know whether we were going to be able to have it or not, but that's an easy fix if we're faced with that going forward. So,
Yeah, we can always change it.
Yeah.
For the second year, halfway through the first.
Okay. Professional leave.
Next on the agenda is professional leave request. I'll submit these to you to approve as they're listed.
Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the professional leave request.
Second.
One second.
A motion by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mrs. Will to approve the professional leave request as presented by Dr. Camp. Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports.
First up this evening, you have the COVID report. Right now, really, we're doing quite well, knock on wood, as a district. So I don't know if this is wood or not, but
Probably not.
anyway, North Posey, teachers and staff, we have 0 positive cases, 1 quarantine, and 1 is currently being tested. Students, we have 0 positive cases, 8 quarantine. North Posey Junior High School, teachers and staff, 0 positive cases and 0 quarantine at this time. Students, 0 positive cases and 6 are quarantined. And all these quarantined are due to close contact. So North Elementary, we have the teachers and staff, 1 is currently quarantined, and then students, 0 positive cases and 16 quarantined. And at South Terrace, teachers and staff, we have 0 positive cases, 0 quarantined. And then students, we have 0 positive cases and 8 quarantined. On bus drivers, we have 2 quarantined and possibly a 3rd driver that could be quarantined tomorrow. So this is the one concern, and I'll talk a little bit about this. We're going to be doing a press release probably tomorrow because we are very close to not having enough bus drivers to run our routes. We are not wanting to close school down, but we may have to do a double route or ask parents to bring their kids to school. So that press release will be going out tomorrow just to notify parents to kind of give them advance warning to be prepared for this in case this would happen. And what we're trying to look at on the double routes is looking at those smaller routes that don't have as many kids on them that we can definitely do. And as Dr. Camp and I have talked, we're going to try and figure out what that route will be so that those parents, if we're going to do a double route, we can contact them very quickly and get them notified so that they can make those plans and stuff. So anything more you want to add to that?
And then that could happen on the drop of a hat if somebody calls us that morning and says they can't come to work. That's the worst case scenario. But after that, other than that, we try to do it, in advance.
As we said earlier, our big goal is to continue with school. I mean, that's really what the goal is. And if those students are unable to get to school, they can definitely participate through the virtual learning and stay up with their lessons that way. So we will give them that option. So any questions on that? Next up, school board report, school board election report. We want, as Jeff did earlier this evening, we want to welcome Mr. Colley and congratulate Amy as well as Vince on winning the reelection. So it's going to be great having you guys all on board and in January as we move forward and stuff. Good news report. You have your good news report there for the month of November. And I apologize, it took me a while. For some reason, I was having some technology issues trying to get last month's posted, but I finally did. So now that I know how to do it, I can get that out a little bit quicker this month. So, but anyway, we have that good news report there. A lot of great things are taking place and happening in the district. And, you know, it's just really also, I think the other positive thing that I enjoy reading this is the amount of community support that we have. And we just really appreciate all the different people and businesses that support our schools and really buy into what we're doing here. I think that says a lot. So, Mr. President, we'll get that posted and out there for the community to see.
All right.
And that's all we have for you this evening. The next regular school board meeting will be December 14th here in the board office. We'll begin executive session at 5:30 and the regular meeting at 6:30.
Anybody have anything for the good of the cause?
You changed the executive session time.
We might, because if we're interviewing
We have interviewed.
school board
Attorneys.
yeah, we may change that executive time.
Because that time's listed as open now.
Okay.
Anybody having any trouble coming in early on that date?
I don't think so.
As long as I know in advance where I can mark my calendar out.
Mr. Colley, thank you for being here. Hope you can be here in the December meeting. You can't come into the executive session because you've not been sworn in yet, but we'd like to see you here again.
All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. A motion by Mrs. Stocks, or Mrs. Will, seconded by Mr. Stocks to adjourn. We are so adjourned. Thank you, guys.
I think this is a great